The Hinagami family had just finished dinner. Karen and Ayato had bathed in the warmth of the hearth.
兄様、このお洋服はいいと思いませんか?
Karen showed off the fashion magazine Shizura had brought with him after returning home for the first time in March, eagerly eyeing her brother's reaction.
僕にはよくわからないよ。
Yeah, I don't care. Ayato shook his head. Ugh, yep, saw that one coming from a mile away. Ayato may have loved drawing, but he couldn't have cared less about the latest fashion trends.
ゆかさんはどう思います?
Thus, Karen turned to Yuka, who was cleaning up after dinner.
私はお洋服を着ないので。あ、でもお嬢様には似合いますよ。そう思いますよね、綾人様。
ああ、うん。
Yeah, sure.
聞いていましたか、兄様。
もちろんだよ。
His response made it all the more evident his mind had been worlds away.
綾人様はさつきさんのことを考えだったのではありませんか?
Hell yeah, even when she's not here, we get to bring her up and make Karen pissed. I love it. Why? Why would he be thinking about Satsuki? What's so great about Satsuki? Why would he care about Satsuki?
え? そんなことないけど。
Karen was irritated by her brother's bald-faced lie.
兄様、そんなのはどうだっていいでしょ? ゆかさんもおかしなことは言わないで。
Shut up.
はい、申し訳ありませんでした。
Yuko meekly apologized. However, Ayato's head was still in the clouds.
兄様?
Karen tugged at her twin's sleeve. He said that, yet he simply kept nodding like a mindless marionette.
もう、最近さっちゃんに会っていないからって落ち込まないでください。
Karen was shouting before she could stop herself. Their brother and Satsuki had spent a lot of time together after the festival. The girl had suddenly stopped showing herself to others one day as if she vanished in a puff of smoke.
いろいろあったから、もう東京に帰っちゃったのかな。
Ayato hung his head.
そうなんじゃないですか?
After all, Naori's cousins had recently done just that.
気になるんでしたら、神社へ行って確かめてきたらいいじゃない。
言ったけどさ、なんかピリピリしてるんだよ。
警察の方もよく神社に出入りしているそうですからね。若女将の話では、ほとんどの方はすでに帰られたとのことですけど。
Most, not all.
今晩も何やら説明することがあるとかで、こちらに見えられるそうですが。またですか? いい加減にしてもらいたいわ。
Karen loosed a heavy sigh. She just hoped that this whole mess would finally be over by winter's end. Jesus. I hope people just forget about this whole death thing by the end of the winter, alright? Jesus. Meguri waited outside the secret base, her heart beating madder than a drum at a parade. She'd been pacing so much that her footprints littered the whole vicinity by now.
落ち着きなさいよ、グリコ。
He shook her head with an exasperated look on her face. Meguri stopped and swiveled toward you.
こんなことするの初めてだし。
そりゃそうでしょうね。
You sighed.
でもいいの？
わかってるわよ。
Meguri shouted before her friend could finish.
リヒトはきっとさっちゃんのことが好きなのは間違いないけど。
She's gonna confess just to get shot down.
ずっと好きだったものね。
Meguri couldn't deny Yu's claim. She never told anyone how she felt, not even you. And yet, her friend had seen through her all the same.
仕方ないじゃない。好きになっちゃったんだから。
Meguri's voice was faint as the flickers of a dying candle flame.
ずっとさっちゃんよりもずっと前から好きだったんだもん。
わかってるわよ。
You rustled Meguri's hair.
もうそろそろリヒトが来るはずよ。
うん。おひなに気づかれてなければいいけど。
私が呼びに行った時おひなはいなかったから大丈夫だと思うわよ。
ありがとう、若女将。
どういたしまして。
You wiped the snow off her shoes.
じゃあ私は行くから。
Meguri watched as you slowly faded out of sight. Said she'd be waiting nearby, which meant Meguri had to get her answer here and now. No, she already knew what the answer would be. She'd known from the start. Thus, this confession was little more than a way for her to finally put her feelings to bed. She took a deep breath. Arctic air flooded into her lungs. She felt the knots in her stomach unwinding at the same time. It'll be fine. I've got this. Meguri looked up and saw Ayato approaching. She hurriedly looked down and took another breath. Her heart was racing like a runaway train.
グリコ、
Ayato called out to her.
若女将から聞いたんだけど、
Meguri raised her head and acted like everything was normal. However, she couldn't bring herself to say the words her heart was screaming.
それにカレンには内緒って言われたし。
あんまり気にしなくてもいいのよ。
そう？
ええ、そうよ。
Oh, so you tell me I should go get her then?
それ
Let her
で
join in on it?
何かあったの？
Meguri's eyes darted every which way. Her words were failing her again.
うん。
Ayato cocked his head. He's gonna get fed up with me if I don't act soon. Much to Meguri's misfortune, her brain was going haywire at that moment, rendering her unable to find the right thing to say.
だから、
She blinked over and over until eventually she felt something hot rolling down her cheeks.
グリコ。
あ、
Suddenly, everything was a blur. Now that the dam had broken, she couldn't stop crying.
ごめん。
Meguri looked away from Ayato and sniffled. Even she didn't know why she was crying. Was it because she was having trouble speaking? This makes no sense. All I've got to do is talk to him the same way as always, yeah? And yet, she couldn't bring herself to say it despite that knowledge.
ごめん。
Thus, she simply apologized once more.
大丈夫かい？
Ayato's voice was laced with kindness and concern. Unfortunately, that just made her feel even worse. What do I do? I'm never gonna tell him if this keeps up.
あのね、リヒト。
Ultimately, she tried talking before she had time to think, in hopes of conveying her feelings to him.
私、リヒトのことが好き。
Her heart burst apart at the seams the moment those words finally escaped her lips.
あの、
I'm sorry, what? I genuinely did not hear that. Can you speak up? Ayato's eyes widened like saucers at the abrupt confession.
ただそれだけ言いたかったの。だから、ごめん。
Meguri kicked off the snow and tried to run away, unable to bear staying in Ayato's presence for a second longer.
待って。
But he immediately grabbed her arm. Meguri nearly tripped over. However, Ayato caught her and kept her in place. Ayato promptly released her.
あの、いきなりのことで何を言えばいいのかわからん。
分かってる。
Meguri shook her head.
分かってるけど、聞かせ。
うん。僕は多分、さっちゃんのことが好きなんだ。
Meguri's raging heart finally quelled like the sea after a ferocious tempest when she heard that.
うん。ありがとう、リヒト。
グリコ。
分かってたから、大丈夫。明日からまた、これまで通りの友達でいようね。
She smiled at Ayato, though honestly she couldn't tell how genuine it looked. You know what, I'll give her props though. I'll give her props for trying. Meguri's sobs resounded through the darkness of the secret base.
頑張ったね、グリコ。
You comforted her like a mother.
でも、分かってるのに。
Why does my heart hurt so bad? Meguri wept for what felt like ages in the secret base until her tears finally ran dry. Aw, poor Meguri. And I did like Meguri. I thought she was nice. But I really liked what they've built up with Ayato and Sadi. Satsuki was resting in her futon, eyes shut. It had been hours since she'd gone to bed, yet slumber still eluded her. Was it because she'd been confined to this room for days? Or possibly due to lazing about so long without lifting a finger like a sloth? No, perhaps the fear of facing another spine-chilling nightmare is what kept her awake. That's fair. Dread would seize her in its clutches come nightfall. She saw black, white, and red in the darkness. Her mind was fading. And yet, for some reason, she told herself that she mustn't fall asleep. For no matter how hard she tried to fight it, she couldn't keep the revolting memories out of her mind. Let's go talk to the doll. Maybe the mirror. She heaved a weary sigh. If she slept, terrifying nightmares would assail her. But if she didn't, she'd recall terrifying memories. Which was the more palatable of those poisons?
私は見ていただけなのに。
Just then, there was a voice. She craned her head to see the doll on the floor, staring blankly at her.
ねえ。何？あの人と何かあったの？何か？
Satsuki's heart nearly caught in her throat despite her efforts to answer as casually as possible. She hadn't told anyone about that. It was a secret only she and he shared.
あなたはずるい。私がずるい。ええ。私が欲しいもの、すべてを持っていく。
She felt the darkness deepen.
ねえ、どうして？私はそんなつもりなんてない。
She sat up in her futon. Her heart ached. That hadn't been her intention at all. It was hard to deny the accusation.
あなたは本来私の影のはず。私はあなたの影。
Indeed. She was a guardian, never allowed to step out into the light.
知っているわ。だからあの時だって私が。どうして？
Two voices overlapped.
じゃあどうして？私からあの人を奪ってしまったの？奪うつもりなんてない。
Because I can never be with him. You're the only one who has that right.
私はいつか消えてしまわねばならないから。
Okay. And so she'd wanted to leave some kind of proof that she'd existed. Before she faded for good. In his heart, if at all possible. notice the difference between us? Even if he hasn't yet, one day, maybe, just maybe.
私はあなたになり変わりたかった。
Satsuki muttered those words in a low voice.
影の方がより多くの光を浴びていた。
She reached her arms out.
私の中にあなたはいない。
A shiver rushed down her spine.
あなたと一つになって私は本当の私になるの。私はまだ。
She gripped the doll.
だからお願い。
Satsuki's fingers sank into Satsuki's neck. Okay. So the doll was never there. Gotcha. Because, like, this doll was, like, her alternate personality, right? The doll was never there. The mirror was there, but the doll was never actually there. Everything she did to the doll, she was actually doing to herself. Gotcha. So that one time where it said, like, she grabbed the doll's head and she squeezed, it meant she was, like, holding her own head in her hands and, like, squeezing it at that point. Gotcha. So when she goes to choke the doll, she's actually choking herself. She firmly took hold of the futon sheets, the very same futon where a corpse now lay. Once ready, she carefully wrapped the sheets around the body's arms so they wouldn't get dirty. Eventually, said arms were covered with fingertips. Were covered from fingertips to shoulder. Then she procured a chisel after she confirmed the position of the shoulder joint. Finally, she set the chisel atop the sheet against the joint and struck it with a mallet. The chisel's blade gouged out the corpse's flesh. Carmine stains danced across the white sheets. The visceral squelching of skin and sinew tearing asunder abruptly ended when the blade came into contact with sturdy bone. In its place arose the cacophony of bones breaking apart. Or was I wrong? Does she have some kind of body double then? Huh. In its place arose the cacophony of bones breaking apart. The chisel carved through the corpse with great ease, likely due to its slim build. Next, she produced a small knife and severed the armpit's thick tendon. That part was decently challenging in comparison, due to the resilience of the muscle. The resulting spatters of blood liberally painted the futon crimson. Finally, once the tendon was completely severed, she set the knife aside and began tugging on the arm while twisting it. Ah! The room resounded with the creaking and crunching of bones grinding against one another. She picked up the knife again and started chopping out the epithelium this time. Okay, Google. Fuck is epithelium? Epithelial tissue is one of the four main types of body tissue found in your organs and covers internal and external surfaces in your body. It lines the outer surfaces of organs and blood vessels throughout the body. Okay. So it's just like tissue that lines organs and vessels? Alright. You say so. Her work was meticulous and careful so as not to produce any unnecessary blemishes or scratches. A cocktail of red blood and white fat gushed out of the corpse. It was foul and reeked of decay. And yet, she continued her work without so much as batting an eye, as though she were merely dressing a pig or chicken. She removed the arm. Then she lovingly caressed it, catching the blood dripping from its stump with her mouth. Okay. So maybe that is the case. There were essentially two Satskis, right? One being a body double, and then one who was actually the Oracle, right? And the body double is there to make sure people don't think that she was the Oracle, right? Oh, Satsuki can't be the Oracle. She's the one out in the crowd, right? That's why she calls her shadow, right? And then like the one we saw dancing with, like doing the dance with Saya and whatnot, that was the Oracle Satsuki, right? I'm not sure which one. Okay, I was trying to think this through. I'm guessing the Oracle Satsuki must have had some kind of interaction with Ayato at some point, because they did mention that the visitor, that like part of tradition would be like the visitor would be married into the Hinagami family. But I don't know if maybe the Oracle Satsuki might have had interactions with Ayato prior, but it was the body double Satsuki who actually slept with him. Hence how her shadow took that from her, right? And hence why the body double wanted to have something left behind that was her, right? A memory that was hers. So many of the main things would belong to that Oracle Satsuki, while the other was simply a body double. And that's what she's saying at the end when she says that, oh, God, I lost my train of thought. When she says that, I wonder if he'll be able to tell the difference between us. If he'll be able to recognize it was truly me. That's got to be what it is. And of course, the Shigasas would never tell about the body double, because that's the whole point, is that people don't know who the Oracle is, right? So when Satsuki was checked in for her physical, they said, oh yeah, she lives alone, and all this time they'd had us believed that she lived alone. But there was the doll. The doll, I was right, the doll wasn't real, but the doll was a real person. Interesting. And so now the Oracle has to get their revenge on... Okay. So I'm guessing then, in that moment during the murder, the one who was holding the knife was the body double Satsuki, hence why she was hesitant to do it. Meanwhile, the Oracle Satsuki was the one like trying to force her hand down to do it, because she seems to be a lot more invested in, the rituals and whatnot, is what I'm led to believe. And now that this body double is no longer of any use, she's being disposed of, and then it will never matter, because as far as this village is concerned, there is only ever one Satsuki. I don't know what apparently, I'm guessing this is part of the ritual where Satsuki gets dismembered, but yeah, Satsuki wrapped her hands around Satsuki's throat. That's not an invalid. She didn't strangle herself, but the one Satsuki strangled the body double Satsuki. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay. Okay. Wow. There's a lot to take in there. And I'm almost interested in rereading it, right? Rereading it to see if I can see where the points are, where if you can tell the difference between Oracle Satsuki and Body Double Satsuki. Which one is truly which? I feel like that, because I feel like, you know, now that I have this revelation, I mean, it hasn't been confirmed yet, but I feel pretty solid about this theory. It'd be interesting to like reread it and like see if I could discern where the differences were. See if I could truly pick it apart. Because like, you know, it would be meant to be difficult, right? Because the one is supposed to be a body double of the other. And I assume that means in her actions as well. So that way the people can't truly tell which one is out in public and doing things. I don't know, interesting. Interesting. Very interesting. Anyway, continue with the dismemberment of your body double. By all means. You go, girl boss. However, she wasn't quite licking it. She was drinking it. Oh, she was drinking the blood. Okay. After continuing for a while, she gingerly set the arm atop the futon as if to say she'd had her fill. Oh. With that, she resumed her macabre work. She rammed the chisel into the opposite arm. Though blood didn't exactly start gushing out, the act was still enough to decorate the area in a fresh coat of scarlet. The futon and floor beneath it were likely soaked. She carved out the unnecessary portions and removed the arm. Afterwards, she opened up the sheet and kissed the fingertips. She then wrapped her tongue around those fingers and sucked on them for quite some time. Whoa, freaky. Finally, she released them, carefully wiped the saliva-drenched fingers, rewrapped the sheet around them, and set the arms on the futon. She rose to her feet with chisel and mallet in hand before moving on to the corpse's legs. Moments later, she opened its kimono, exposing pallid thighs. She caressed those parts of its bare skin completely unsullied by blood. Fingers glided over to the root of the corpse's legs. Once there, she pressed against the groin and started rubbing it. The impressions of her fingers remained even when she finally released it. Afterwards, she wrapped the corpse's legs in unblemished sheets. And finally, she took the chisel again and pressed it right beneath the hip bone, projecting from the groin. The blade sank deep. Yellow fat dripped out from the wound, but because the corpse had more meat there than on his shoulders. Blood spurted forth a few seconds later. It blended with the air, creating a juice that oozed out with a sickening squelch. And yet she continued with the chisel regardless, swiftly dismembering the leg. Occasionally, she would slice the skin with a knife while carefully exerting the chisel to cleanly sever the femur from the hip joint. She peeled the skin off the unnecessary portions, carved the flesh, and sliced the tendon. The genitals near the stump had already lost shape. She pried the chisel around the joints like a lever. And with that, she tore the cartilage from the bones. The leg was successfully rended from the body with a conspicuously loud noise. Lastly, she severed the muscles still connected and wrapped the cut surface in a sheet. Red fluid seeped into it in a matter of moments. She set it alongside the arms and got to work on the last leg. Since she'd already completed work on 3 limbs, this final one went rather smoothly. It didn't take all that much time to amputate it. Her lips twisted into a satisfied smile when she was done. Next, she wrapped the corpse's torso in a blanket. Long hair fell over it like mold on stale bread. With that done, she lifted the body, finding it much lighter than it had been in life thanks to the lack of limbs. She closed the door. The severed limbs were still sitting in the dark storehouse. Little to nothing stirred at this hour. The choking stench of death filled the air. Blood pooled around the vicinity of the dismemberment site. Okay. She opened the door, Satsuki's body clearly defined in the moonlight. I feel like there's gotta be because now essentially, obviously, Satsuki's dead, body double Satsuki. But there's gotta be some connection as to why she's essentially now in the same state that present day Toko is, right? Limbless, totally limbless, but still, head still attached. I guess the difference would be the strangulation, but still, just torso and head. Like, why wasn't the head removed? Why wasn't anything done to the body itself? I feel like there's got to be a connection there. A connection between this moment and then what eventually inspires, I'm guessing, Shinzo Mamiya to create Girl in Shell, mayhaps. I feel like there's got to be some kind of connection there. Those were the first words out of Naori's mouth.
ダメなのは分かってるけどさ。
Naito hung his head.
結局詳しく確かめてないんだろ。
まあ、そうだけど、聞ける雰囲気じゃなかったんだよ。
それでも知りたいんだったら聞くべきじゃないのか。昨日だって仕草の人がひな神に来てたんだろ。
刑事さんがうちと仕草の人を呼んで話を聞いてたみたいだけど。
Naito grumbled.
だからナオちゃんにも手伝ってもらおうと思って連れてきたんじゃないか。
まあ、そんなことだろうと思ったよ。
Gotta get the loudmouth friend to come help you out. I get it, I've been there. Asking about Satsuki seems simple enough for Naori. However, the question remained whether it was appropriate for him to do so. Aito was the one who wanted to know after all, so by all rights he should be the one stepping up.
一緒に行ってやるから自分で聞けよ。
分かってるよ。
Aito nodded. And yet, he still hesitated to begin the trek up the staircase.
ほら、リヒト。
Aito took a timid step forward. He must really like her to go to all these lengths, huh? Naori himself had never fallen for a girl before. He just found that he didn't understand the ABCs of love. Perhaps it was because he'd been raised under the idea that Japanese boys should faithfully serve their nation without allowing the trappings of romance to distract them. Nah, I probably would have still felt the same, even if I hadn't been brought up that way. I mean, how could I live for another, let alone this entire nation? I don't even know how to live for myself. Oh. Preach, my guy. Preach. Lately, Naori had been doing a lot of soul-searching about what he truly wanted to do with his life. Becoming a doctor hadn't been his idea. However, his father wasn't exactly forcing him down that path either. Naori simply had no idea what else he was capable of. Once upon a time, he'd wanted to be an author, but he cast aside that dream without even realizing it at some point. No.
ナオちゃん
Naori's ruminations were interrupted by the sight of Aito scrutinizing his face.
ああ、悪い。
Wait, no. Okay. He's not. No, he's not. He's not. Obviously, when I hear author, the first thing I think of is Shinji Mamiya, right? Like, he was the author that wrote not Girl in Shell, whatever the first book was called. The second book is called Shell of Sheol, right? But like, whatever the fucking first book was called, I don't remember. Was it just called The Black Shell? I don't think so. Something like that, though. But whatever, the author guy. But like, no, couldn't it be? Even though, like, seeing his profile right now, seeing that face, it's like, I could see it if they wanted to go with that. Like, oh, actually, Shinji was adopted. But it's like, no, we already know enough about Shinji's backstory to know that, like, the Mamiyas are definitely his family. I doubt he would just be sent up to be raised in this mountain village by random people. At least that's what I'd think, anyway. I don't know. Curious. I feel like there's a reason they point out they wanted to be an author, right? So I'm guessing something's gonna come into play in the present day involving a book. And naturally people are gonna think Shinji Mamiya, right? The mysterious author. And maybe it'll even be something titled under Shinji Mamiya, but it could be him using someone else's name. Who knows? I don't know. because I'm not gonna lie, they're just his teen self. I could see a little bit of a resemblance from what I remember of Shijimame anyway. Interesting, interesting. But I could speculate all day long. Let's keep reading. For the time being, taking care of Ayato's problems came first. Because, I mean, then it... Because it would connect to why he would... Well, that's the thing. We haven't seen the dismembered corpse yet, so it wouldn't make sense for him to know about it. I don't know. Naoto was only interested in their feelings for one another.
じゃあ
Ayato started ascending the stairs. Naoto slowly followed him amidst the snowflakes dancing on the wind. Though perhaps it was only natural since he was younger, his cousin lived however he pleased. Naoto would have been lying if he said he wasn't jealous. Ayato simply stuck his nose into whatever he fancied, unbound by his social status or taboos. He was totally different from a guy like Naori, who simply wore the mask of a people person. There's no wonder Satsuki and Meguri were attracted to him. Why, even his sister Karen adored him. Yeah. He's nothing like me. Just then a question popped into Naori's head as he trailed behind Ayato. Exactly when was it that I became so cynical? When I first started reading Dad's book collection, perhaps? Naori had pored over his father's entire stock of psychiatry books. Among them, he'd been particularly fascinated with Freud's psychoanalysis. I'm sorry, I just stopped to ponder again, right? Because clearly the Kuroyas and the Kichikis are connected, right? But we also know that the Mamiyas were family friends to the Kichikis as well. So there's a common connector there, I feel. I'm definitely reaching at something. Definitely a very big reach. I don't know, there's something there. I feel like there's something there. The son who wants to be an author. Anyway. The awareness of the unconscious that lurked in the depths of the mind intrigued him. That said, he hadn't understood a lick of it, though not for lack of trying, probably because he'd taken the whole thing at face value. Though really, that was exactly what he found so fascinating about it. Perhaps he wanted to become a doctor precisely to make sense of those writings. But at this point, he failed to understand that wish itself was an unconscious desire dwelling in the depths of his psyche. The cousins scaled the staircase. Now he looked up when he heard Ayato rasp out that single word. Oh. Yikes. A girl in a kimono was standing there under the shrine's archway. Ooh, she won't standing. She not standing. No, not standing. Floating.
Satcha.
Sadie? There was no mistaking that long hair and kimono pattern. Ayato raced over to her. Naori promptly followed suit. Satsuki was suspended in midair by ropes secured to the archway.
Satcha.
Ayato reached for her, only to freeze right up. The boy fell to his knees. Satsuki's kimono was littered with splotches of blood. The snowy wind blew the hem all the way up to her waist, yet her legs were nowhere to be found.
Satcha.
Sadie. Ayato stared up at Satsuki, his whole body rooted in place. His visage was deathly pale. Her visage. Satsuki's sleeves fluttered in the snowy wind. It's hard to tell whether Ayato didn't understand what he was seeing, or was in grave denial of reality.
Satcha.
Sadie.
返事してよ。
Ayato tearfully called out to Satsuki's limp, lifeless husk. On the other hand, Naori was meticulously analyzing the sight before him. Okay. Now I gotta stop and think. So they want the public to believe that Satsuki is dead. They want them to believe that. Okay. I'm just trying to predict how this plays out down the line. I still believe in the body double theory. I still believe that's 100% the case. There was a body double to prevent people from thinking that Satsuki was the Oracle. Because then it would have been obvious to figure out, right? But then they want to display that Satsuki's dead. So they put the body double's corpse out to display so people think that Satsuki's dead. But then what happens with the real Satsuki, the Oracle Satsuki, we'll call her? So at this point, there's no idea which one is truly the real one, right? The one that's currently living, anyway. What's the end goal for her? Where does she go after this? Because clearly she can't stay in Hitogata because they believe Satsuki's dead, and her staying would clearly ruin that image. So she has to leave at some point. At some point. But where does she go? What happens? I'm sure that's something, obviously, the story will answer for us, but I'm just trying to think. Just trying to use my own brain for a bit. Stop and ponder for a moment. I don't know how we connect it back to... Because the thing, I want to try to connect it back to the present day events, right? But I really can't. Because, like, we know of the one character who has the long dark hair and whatnot, but she's a kid in Yukari's class who wouldn't even... If she did exist at this point, she'd be a toddler, right? So I definitely don't think she and Yukiko are the same person. Definitely not. Curious. Very curious. Alright, enough pondering.
わざわざ鳥居に縛り付けていったのか。
Who would do that? And why?
そんなことどうだっていいだろう。
Ato roared, completely losing his cool.
サッチャ
Saddy. He wailed his heart out.
警察を呼んでくる。
Now he turned around. That would have been faster to go get someone from the shrine. Instead, he didn't want to risk that. Oh, and they still didn't know the culprit's identity. For whether the work of the curse of Lord Hina or not, it was all but certain that the members of Shigasha Shrine were closely tied to this. Closely tied. Anyway. The snow intensified, shrouding everything in its path.